So hello and welcome to this very cold November day. It's warming up a little bit now, the sun's coming up, but it's getting so cold and I actually secretly love it. I love this time of year. You know, it's the excitement of Christmas and all the frosts are appearing and it's really exciting. But what I'm here to do today is to answer a few of your questions. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that commented on the last question video and asked the questions. I do apologise that the video is a little bit later than I said it would be. I got back from Wales on Wednesday and it's been a bit of a rush to get up here to answer some of the questions. Now I won't have time to answer them all, so I also apologise for that. But if you do have any more questions, then I will answer them in the next video, which will be uploaded in 2 weeks' time. So just pop your questions in the comments and I will try and answer them. So we will start with Mick Watson, who asked, has your family all been keen gardeners and how many generations does this interest go back to? So obviously I only started gardening about 5 years ago. When I helped out on my dad's allotment, who is also a keen gardener. Now he hasn't really been into gardening until 5 years ago as well, but it does run in his family. Now his mum, my nan, and my granddad were very keen gardeners. They had a vegetable plot in their back garden. My nan used to make preserves, and jams and wines and things. Unfortunately, I never got to meet either of them, which is a shame because I think I would have really got on with my nan. She liked knitting and sewing and making things, and obviously she liked gardening, so I think I would have got on really well with both of them, but unfortunately they died before I was born. But again, my dad's nan was a professional cook, and my dad's granddad was a very, very keen gardener. Apparently he had a huge vegetable plot and he had a lot of land. So again, there's that generation as well. And I have gone back to 1911, which would have been my great granddad's family. Now I've got the census here of 1911, and Warren Lane, which was my great granddad, was one of 13 children, and 4 of his older brothers and his dad, their personal occupations were agricultural labourers. So again, it goes back to as far as 1911, what I found out so far. And actually one of the brothers was 13 years old, and it has here that he was a helper driver on the farm at 13 years old. So yeah, gardening and agricultural does go back as far as 1911 in my family. I absolutely love family history, and I did this family history about 6 years ago. It's so amazing what you find out, and I'm so pleased that I'm carrying on the tradition of gardening, and that my family before me were doing what I'm doing now, maybe on a larger scale, but it's nice to know that I'm carrying on the tradition, and that hopefully when I have kids I'll be able to show them and let them carry on the tradition as well. I'm a huge fan of family traditions. I don't know if you got that already but there's a bit of comfort to know that you're doing what your nans did and your great nans and your great granddads did before you. So yes, gardening is in the family, and it does go quite back a few generations. So next question is from Malcolm Brown. Now he says, I ain't got no germination. Any advice would be very welcome. Now, you all know that I've had a few problems with germination before, especially in the open soil. My carrots were a pain, but what I will say to you, Malcolm Brown, is that do not give up. My carrots, for instance, the first sowing I did, I think was a little bit too early and the soil was too wet, so they didn't come up. But I tried again, and the second sowing came up beautifully. So do not give up, just keep trying. but there's a few factors that you need to take into account with germination. Now, you need to take into account if the seed was too old or if it was too hot or too cold. The soil might have been too wet or too dry, and the seed might have been sown at the wrong depth. So there's just a few things that you need to take into account when you germinate your seed. Obviously, a few seeds do have special, needs when they germinate. So my main tip is to try again. Do not give up, because germination can be very tricky sometimes. Next question is from Helwyn Hughes, and she said, I've started a flower patch on part of our allotment. I find it difficult to visualise how I want it to look. Could you offer some advice or recommend any books? Now, when I started my flower patch, I planned it out. So my main suggestion is to get a bit of paper to draw out the space that you have. Write down the flowers that you already like and that you already grow and that grow well. But the main thing is to just grow what you love. Don't listen to what other people tell you to grow. If you like a flower, grow it. It's that simple. But I will just recommend a website called Pinterest, which is like an online mood board. It's amazing, and you will be completely hooked. I do apologise. But if you type in flower patch on there, millions and millions of pictures will come up of other people's flower gardens, and you will just be completely inspired. I promise you, it's an amazing place. But just plan your space out. List down the flowers that you already love, and the thing to remember is that if you're not happy with it, it doesn't have to stay like that. Most gardens take a few years to really get into the flow of things. My flower patch is in its second year now. It's still not complete. It's still changing. I'm still finding new flowers that I want to grow there, and I'm still changing things around. So whatever you do plan, it's not completely set in concrete. So just play around with it, really. That's all I can suggest. Riverside Allotments asked, what should we do with our raised beds over winter? Now, with my beds, I cover them with manure, because the main thing you want to do is add nutrients back into that soil. And with raised beds, with raised beds, shop bought compost will lose its nutrients very, very fast. So you want to add them back in. Now, you could have done, it's a bit too late now, but you could have sown green manure into your beds and then dug them in. That will create a nice cover crop over winter, and you can also dig them in and dig the nutrients in spring. So obviously that's the thing to remember for next year. You can cover the beds up with plastic, which will heat the soil ready for the spring seed germination. And it will also keep the weeds down, which is good. But the thing that I do is I crop rotate my beds, which in turn add nutrients to what the next year beds will need. But I also add manure. So there's a few things to think about there, but what I do is crop rotate and manure. So Twinkle Toes, Mike Furland and P.R. Heaton all asked, can you show us how to use the notebook you have? Now, I must confess, I left my notebook in Wales and I'm so upset about it. I realised last night and I was frantically looking for it, but I think I left it in Wales, which I feel completely lost without my notebook. Like, I carry it everywhere with me, and the only reason why I left it in Wales is because I made my notebook cover, and it proved quite popular on Instagram, so I decided to make some more. So I took my notebook out my bag to use it as a pattern, and I left it there. But I did make one for my dad a few years ago, so it's basically just a cover with allotment notes stamped on it, and then inside is just a notebook. is just a plain notebook which slots into the cover. So yeah, it's just a plain notebook. Now he hasn't actually written in his much, you can see, but mine's nearly full now. And the best thing I like about just having a notebook is, you know, you don't have the pressure of writing in it. So in my notebook, you know, I have lists of what to do. I have what seeds I'm buying. I have plans for next year. I have drawings. You know, I have, you know, inspiration and techniques written down there, which, you know, have proven to work quite well for me. So for me, that's the best way to go. But I will just show you these two other notebooks quickly. So this is the first one I ever got. It's a Sophie Conran one by Bergen & Bourne. It's just a gardener's journal. Now I actually didn't mind this one. This one was quite good. The dividers are just months, and in each month you've got a to-do list, weekly planner, doodle pad, you've got a weather log, you've got a photo diary, and then you've just got notes. So that's in every month. And, you know, it proved okay, because you're not, you know, you're not pressured into writing specific things down all the time. So I do recommend the Sophie Conran one. I think she's got a new one now, which is like a ring binder. The one I had last year was this Moleskin, and this is a dedicated gardener's journal. And the dividers down the side are a little bit more complicated. Plants, pots, tools, etc., design, visits, and garden log. Now I found this book very pressuring into writing things down, and if you didn't write them down at the right time and you forgot, you know, it's ruined. For me anyway, because I'm a complete organised freak and I love notebooks. I hate making mistakes in notebooks, so when I forget to write something down, which you have to write down, you know, I get a little bit but the one thing that was okay about this book was the plant category. So you wrote down your vegetable, the variety, the characteristics, the water requirements, the positioning, where you got it from, where you saw it, you know, when you sown it, germinated, planted it out, harvested it on, any problems. It's quite complicated. But if you are very, very thorough and very, very, you know, organised like that, then, you know, it's quite good. But for me, just a plain, ordinary notebook is the way to go. And the best thing I like about my notebook, because it's got 3 years of growing in there now. I can look back at what I was doing, you know, last November and things. So yeah, that's the notebooks which I've had, but I do recommend just having a notebook. You can just doodle away then and write away and make mistakes, and it doesn't matter. So I hope that's answered your question. So the Mr. Woodsman, who's called Paul, asked, I have decided to start a new vegetable plot on my garden. It is just a lawn at the moment. Any questions? My question is, how do I start? So the main thing to ask is if your grass has any perennial weeds. If it does, then obviously you'll need to dig them out, but you can do that at a later stage, but you just need to remember to dig them out. You can cut the lawn off, flip it over, turn it over so the grass is facing down, and put a layer of manure on top, and that will all compose down into a nice topsoil. Obviously, if you don't want the trouble of, you know, digging up your lawn and turning it over, then you can use a method called the no dig method, which is basically just layering materials on top of each other and letting them decompose down into, you know, a compost. So you can start by adding a layer of manure, then putting a layer of cardboard on top, then putting another layer of compost or manure on top, and organic materials like grass clippings, leaves, you know, more manure. You need to water it every now and again, because obviously that will help the process of it composing down. But you know, that might be one of the easier ways to go for you. Obviously you need to find all the cardboard, which is the main problem, But like I said, if there are any perennial weeds in your lawn, then obviously once it's composed down into compost, you will have to dig the perennial weeds out, because you do not want them growing in your vegetable garden. Shush Lorraine asked, how are allotment rentals done? I've never heard of them. So I get this question quite a lot from a few of my American followers, asking what an allotment is. And basically it's a large patch of land, and near enough every village will have an allotment site. The land's usually privately owned, or it's owned by the council or the government, and you rent it off of them. So I pay £14 a year for my plot, and on our site there's about 40 plots, which is quite small. I mean, you can get humongous allotment plots here in the UK, but our site is quite small, and each individual plot used to be a bit bigger, but they had to cut them down into sizes as the village grew, because it's getting quite big now. But basically I pay £40 a month to the council to grow my own food, which is, it's nothing really, is it? When you do get your allotment, you do need to sign like a contract with some rules on it, which just outline that, for instance, we have to have a 6x4 shed. There's cultivation rules as well. You need to cultivate your plot. There's rules about bonfires and things. About not having animals and things like that. So you do sign some rules. But for £14 a year, you can't really complain, can you? So Bunham Abel said, I'm planning on making a small vegetable patch. What vegetables grow at the fastest rate, and which are your favourites for eating? I'm looking for a variety that has a frequent crop. So one of the main things I will say is radishes. They're so simple, they're so easy, they are fast, and they're just so delicious. I grew radishes for the first time last year, and I am going to grow them forever for the rest of my life. They're so delicious. Now I grow mine in a pot, because I've heard quite a few tales of people growing them in the ground, in the soil, and then being eaten quite a lot, and they proved quite well in the pot. So they're in a galvanised tank at the end of the path. They take about 20 days, from growing to eating, which is so fast. And the best thing about radishes is that you can sow them in succession throughout the year, right until September, which is perfect. So you can have radishes coming out your ears. So radishes are one of my favourite crops, which is fast. And another one I will talk about is Swiss chard, which is basically like spinach, but it's a lot prettier, because I grow a variety called rainbow chard. And it comes in pinks and yellows and whites, and it's so beautiful and it's so delicious. Again, it's a cut and come variety. So basically you take the leaves off and they continue to grow. It's also biennial, so you can leave it over winter and it will grow again the next year, which is perfect. So yes, radishes and Swiss chard are the two crops which I suggest. Obviously there's a few more, like carrots are quite fast, kale's quite fast, but yeah, radishes and Swiss chard, my two favourites. Now Angela Begg asked, do you grow your sweet peas in the autumn, and if so, any tips? Now I actually grow my sweet peas in January. I sow them in these pots called root trainers, which are very deep, and they cater for the extra large root systems of the sweet peas. I've used these root trainers I've used the root trainers for the past 2 years now, and they are amazing. I use them for the beans and the sweet peas, and they're just perfect. One tip I will say is that when the seedlings do appear, when they are about 3 inches tall, put them in a cold frame to stop them going leggy. Now last year I had the best sweet peas that I've ever had, because I put them in the cold frame and they grew beautifully. The year before that I left them on the windowsill and they grew so leggy and they just looked awful. So yes, a cold frame is perfect for also acclimatizing your plants to the outdoors, but also to not make them leggy. Another tip is to pinch out the growing tips when they have about 3 or 4 pairs of leaves. This will create a bushier and more healthy plant, which will produce more blooms for you. And last thing I just want to say is that I have a video in the gardening guide playlist on the YouTube channel all about how to grow sweet peas. So if you want to go into more detail, then watch that video. But I sow mine in January. And last but not least, Sean James Cameron, Maddie Howard and Mark Bannister all asked, what does the future hold? And basically, I don't really know yet. I do know one thing is that, I'm always going to be gardening, hopefully. I love my allotment, and I love coming up here, not only because I grow my own food and I get to eat it, but because it's just like a little haven. I can come up here, not have to do any weeding or anything, and just sit in the shed and just watch the birds, and it's nice because it's a place to come to when you want to get away from your problems, and it's just a nice little haven. So I will always be gardening, but what I will say is that ideally I'd love to move to Wales. I just love it there, and it would be nice to have a bigger vegetable plot where I can grow more. It would be nice to continue doing the videos. So yeah, it would be lovely to move to Wales, and hopefully, in the near future I will, but we shall see what happens. For now, I've got the allotment and I love it, and yeah, I'm sorry that doesn't really answer your question, but hopefully in the near future. You never know. So that's it for the questions. I just want to say thank you again for commenting on the last video and for the questions. And if you do have any more questions, then just put them in the comments below, and I will try and answer them in the next video, which will be roughly in about 2 weeks time. But yeah, that's it. My fingers are frozen, but I hope you enjoyed that and you found it helpful, and I will see you all next time. Oh, another cup of tea, I think.